Imagine waking up every day feeling like no matter what you do, nothing will ever change, that the weight on your chest is permanent, and the pain you carry isn't just a burden, it's a fact of life. Some people live like this for years, even decades. But what if I told you that part of this experience could be explained by something called learned helplessness? In this video, we're going to explore what learned helplessness is, how it forms especially in the brain and due trauma, why it sticks around, and how it can be unlearned, from childhood conditioning to changes in brain chemistry. This is a deep dive into the psychology and neurology of powerlessness and how to break free from it. Learned helplessness is a psychological condition in which a person comes to believe that they have no control over the outcomes in their life. Even when escape or change is possible, it's not laziness, it's not weakness, it's the result of repeated exposure to stress, trauma, or failure where the person internalizes the message that their actions don't matter. Over time, they stop trying altogether, they stop hoping. The concept was first discovered by psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Mayer in the 1960s. In their experiments, dogs were exposed to unavoidable electric shocks. Later, when given a chance to escape, many of them didn't even try. They had learned, through experience, that there was no point in resisting. That same pattern shows up in humans, just in more complex ways. In the brain, learned helplessness is more than a mindset, it's a shift in how we process control and agency. The prefrontal cortex, which helps us make decisions and plan ahead, begins to lose its power to regulate emotions and thoughts effectively. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for danger, overreacting to stress, and reinforcing fear. The balance between reason and emotion is disrupted. The brain begins to encode passivity and hopelessness as the default state of being. Neurochemically, stress plays a huge role. Prolonged exposure to trauma or failure leads to increased levels of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol damages the hippocampus, a brain area essential for learning and memory. This can make it difficult to recognize positive outcomes when they happen. The dopamine reward system also becomes blunted, meaning even when something good does occur, the brain doesn't register it properly. Over time, a person stops associating effort with reward. Now let's look at the psychological side, especially how trauma, particularly in childhood, can lay the foundation for learned helplessness. Imagine a child growing up in a home where nothing they do is ever good enough, or where they're constantly told to stay quiet, that their feelings don't matter, or that they're responsible for adult problems. If they try to seek help or express themselves and get punished or ignored in return, the child starts to internalize the message, "My actions are meaningless, my voice doesn't count," and once that belief sets in, it becomes a mental program repeating into adulthood. Children who experience chronic neglect or abuse often grow into adults who struggle with agency, not because they lack capability, but because their nervous systems were wired in early life to expect rejection, punishment, or failure. When something goes wrong, their first instinct isn't to adapt or fight back, it's to freeze or withdraw. That freeze response, biologically, is rooted in survival, but psychologically, it can become a lifelong cage. Trauma also disrupts identity. People may stop recognizing themselves, living like a passenger in their own body. They may say things like, "What's the point?" or "Why try?" They may stay in toxic relationships, abusive jobs, or self-destructive patterns because their brain and body have been conditioned to believe that escaping is impossible or dangerous. This is where learned helplessness becomes dangerous. It doesn't just dull motivation, it kills hope. So how do we treat it? Can learned helplessness be unlearned? The answer is yes, but it requires a layered approach. One effective strategy is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This therapy focuses on identifying negative beliefs and replacing them with more realistic, empowering thoughts. For someone experiencing learned helplessness, CBT helps them start to recognize when they're generalizing failure. For example, thinking "I failed once, so I'll always fail" becomes "I failed at that, but I've succeeded at other things too." These thought replacements might sound simple, but done repeatedly, they rewire the brain. Another powerful method is exposure to small, manageable successes. When someone has lived in helplessness for years, telling them to believe in themselves often does nothing, but giving them small goals like getting out of bed, Taking a short walk, or completing a simple task can begin to shift their inner narrative. Success builds on success, and the brain starts to associate effort with outcome again. Supportive relationships are also key. Humans are wired for connection, and the presence of a validating, encouraging person can slowly teach someone that not all environments are punishing, that their voice does matter, that they are not alone. Mindfulness and trauma-informed practices like grounding techniques, body scans, and breath work help reconnect a person to the present moment and their physical body, places often abandoned in the wake of trauma. When it comes to medication, sometimes antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications are prescribed to manage related symptoms. These may include SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which increase the availability of serotonin, a neurotransmitter associated with mood and emotion regulation. While medications don't fix learned helplessness directly, they can help stabilize the emotional environment enough for therapy to work. As always, side effects can include nausea, insomnia, and emotional blunting, and should be managed with a healthcare provider. There are also natural ways to support recovery. Regular exercise improves dopamine and serotonin levels naturally. Nutrition matters to deficiencies in B vitamins, magnesium, or omega-3 salts can negatively affect brain function. Sleep, sunlight, and meaningful routines also help reestablish a sense of stability and control. Journaling and narrative therapy can be profound. When people begin to write or speak their story, they reclaim authorship of their life. Even when the past has been painful, putting words to it helps the brain process, organize, and eventually heal. It's important to understand that learned helplessness isn't a flaw in character. It's an adaptation often formed in response to an environment that punished effort, voice, or vulnerability. And because it was learned, it can be unlearned. If you're watching this and feel like nothing will ever change, that you're stuck in the same loops, please know you are not broken. Your brain has done what it thought it needed to do to survive. But now, there's a chance to learn something new, to begin again. And that's what healing is. Not forgetting what happened, but creating new outcomes with the same hands that once felt useless. You don't have to believe you can do everything. You just need to believe that trying is worth it. And that belief, that's the first step out of helplessness and into freedom.